This video is a short video tour of the new District Administration Discipline Data Dashboard tool, which can be really helpful for your school proactive behavior safety teams or district administration that want to look at discipline data and classroom behavior data. So first of all, who can use this dashboard? This dashboard permissions are set so that school-based leaders have access to data for students within their assigned school or articulation area. And central-based leaders also have access to data for all schools district-wide that they support. So the security measures mirror what is actually within Infinite Campus, so the permissions are determined by those same user group rights and employment records, and the row-level security ensures that users only see data that they are authorized to access, and our student data is also encrypted and follows district security policies. So the way to access this dashboard, there's probably multiple pathways, but I usually go through the quick links to get to my report portal, and you're looking at the data, district administration discipline data. So you click on this, and it looks like this. I am looking at all district data. So obviously if you're looking at a school site, you'll see a little bit less, or if you're a community superintendent, you'll see just the articulation areas that you support. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I do want to go through some key features that will be really helpful. So this first tab is district rates, and I've got no filters set right here. So this is looking at district rates, including all students within the district. Just some reminders here, I guess. Enrollment, this is primary and secondary. This does not mean education level. This means primary and secondary enrollments. So this is really probably most often seen at the secondary level, where you might have a student that has a primary enrollment at a neighborhood school and a secondary enrollment at Warren Tech or something like that, or vice versa. So just so you know what that means. And you can sort here by articulation area and a specific school within that articulation area, and even a specific calendar. If your school might have two separate calendars, like in this example, Alameda International has a 7th and 8th grade calendar, as well as a 9th through 12th grade calendar. So again, we're just looking at district data right now, so the numbers are going to be pretty big. And this is a multi-year data. So we've got 2023-24, 2024-25 in this first tab, and it breaks it down by discipline students and percentage in the district, male, female, and non-binary. And then we have our total behavior incidents and resolutions tile, which says in the 23-24 school year, we had 19,383 resolutions, which are responses like detention, ISS, suspension, out of 12,346 unique incidents. So each incident could have multiple events, which could have multiple resolutions per event, which is why this resolution number is always going to be higher than the incident number. Last year, you can see it was fairly static with that. We had slightly more incidents and slightly more resolutions, but that would stand to reason. Should not really have any data for 2025-26 yet, but there is some there. Probably just a matter of wrong date being entered. This tile of distribution of rates, again, we're looking at district demographics, so students with incidents versus district population. So our district population is about 63% white, and those white students count for about 49% of the total students disciplined. Ideally, these would match, so this is just an indication that we might have some work to do within each of these demographic groups. And this school has the same information essentially, but broken down by articulation area. So you can see this first one, Arvada articulation. We have the percent of students disciplined district-wide, and they make up 4% of the district population. More generally, we have our suspension rates district-wide at 36%, our in-school suspension rate at 27%, and this is out of 7,465 total students that were disciplined. 80,000 was the total students that were enrolled at least one day or more last year. So our district totals just gets a little more specific. We can sort by specific type of behavior or a specific type of resolution, or both. And this tells us our total number of disciplined students and our total number of students receiving a suspension. This again has the same resolution counts in a graph form year over year by specific resolution. So you can scroll down and see the rest of the information. And then this tile is resolution rates. We have suspension. Last 23-24 we had a 42% suspension rate, a 29% ISS resolution rate, and a 13% law enforcement rate. And all of those went down last year, which on the surface is very good data. This tile breaks it down by unique behavior incidents by grade level. We've got our PK through grade 2, grades 3 through 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. And it breaks it down further by fall and spring semesters, so you can see if there might be any discrepancies that are noticeable between that. And these are unique students by grade level year over year that have had a discipline incident. So just some basic district total information for this one. The next tab is our by race and ethnicity disproportionality. Again, this is district data. So you can filter by specific incidents. This total ISS OSS days, I'm gonna ask that we put a pin in this for now. This is an important tab when we're looking at some data that CDE pays particular attention to, but for now I'm going to leave that for the moment. You can see that this breaks down the total unique incidents and resolutions by race and ethnicity in a graph form. And then this table here is something that I want to take just a minute to outline. So this is broken down by race, and this is any student with any type of discipline incident or resolution. So for our Black and African American students in 23-24, you can see that there were 1,173 total students enrolled that year, of which 232 of them had a disciplinary incident. There were 753 separate resolutions, so that could have been contact parent, in-school suspension, and a suspension. This was 603 total incidents. So that means that year a Black student within Jeffco had about a 19.8% risk rate of experiencing some type of discipline, which was a little over 2 times that of their non-Black peers. So this is when we talk about disproportionality data, and it is important to pay attention to, as well as the risk rates. And numbers are also important. So if we had, obviously this is 25-26 data, so really shouldn't be there yet, but we have 2 right there. That is not going to be important. But if we go down to our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders for last year, we had 3 students who were disciplined out of 123. So that is a really low number, but we still need to keep an eye on this because CDE looks at any number that is 5 or greater. So that means 5 students that were disciplined. And if we have 5 or more, that is going to be counted in our state data. So we just need to be really cognizant of that. This risk ratio tile is the same table data in a graphic form that's a little bit easier to look at. Just as at a glance, you can see if there were any improvements or maybe some increases in risk rates or ratios that we might want to pay attention to. This has a breakdown by different demographics as well as suspensions by race. Again, this is district data. Students with an incident versus the whole district population. And then these last 2 tiles are behaviors and resolutions by race. It does the top 5 in order, so 4,200 is the most frequent behavior that we see, and suspension is the most common resolution when we break it down by race. The next tab is the same sort of information but by special education disproportionality. Just to be really explicit about this, special education students or students with disabilities are those with an IEP or those that are receiving special education services. And within discipline data, if they had an active IEP on the date of the incident, that is what's counted towards this. So here you can see we have our general education student trend data versus our special education student trend data. So if we look last year, we had 1,938 special education students out of 12,506 that had an incident, meaning 15.5% of our special education students experienced a discipline incident, which was almost twice that of their non-disabled peers. So typically when we're talking about disproportionality and concern, anything over 1.5 is something that we need to start paying attention to, or have that on our radar. So we are there. Same thing as with race and ethnicity. This tile is just the same information as over here, but in graphic form. And then again, we have our suspensions by groups. In this case, it's just general education versus special education, and the same information as broken down by every single support plan if you want to look at that data. Most frequent resolutions for students with an IEP, suspension. Again, this is district-wide, and most frequent behaviors is that 4200 disobedience, defiance, and profanity code. So you can filter by different types of behaviors, again, if you want to look at something specific, or if you wanted to look at just suspensions, you could do that, and that will change your data, not necessarily for the better, but this is something just to be aware of and know how to access to. Anytime you do apply a filter, it's important to always reset before you look at anything else, because it could skew what you're looking at if you've already have a filter applied. So just a reminder for that. And then this combined disproportionality is, again, something that's really important that CDE looks at, because it is combined students with disabilities and broken down by race. And whenever we have significant discrepancies or disproportionality that is evident in the data, this indicates that we might have some work to do. It is not a judgment, it is just an indication. So again, this tab, I'm going to not talk about this right now, but I will do a separate video tour that is more specific just to that. But you can sort by specific type behavior or resolution, and you can see that it breaks it down here by race, ethnicity, and general education and special education. Again, this next tile is the same information that is included in this table, but just in a graphic form. And you can see where there are some discrepancies and where there might be improvement or maybe even a greater need. You can see here for our Black and African American students, it does look like we closed the gap a little bit. We had 3.6 as the risk ratio for discipline incidents for a Black African American student with an IEP, and then last year that dropped to 3.2 risk ratio. So that's a great data point, and we just need to make sure that we're continuing having those trends. The next tab is your support plans. You can filter by all specific flags that are in campus. So if you want to look at what your multilingual learner data might say, that is another thing you could do, or just any of those flags. Again, this will default to general education and special education for this certain tab. So just make sure that you're aware of that, and you're not filtering out something that you might want to be including in your data. This tile talks about suspensions by all support plans. So you can see that all of our IEP students make up about 27% of that. Students without any sort of support plan are 34% of our suspensions. So there's some other areas that might be impacting this as well. Obviously, there are students on IEP that also have a safety plan, so they might have multiple flags on there. Same most top 5 behaviors and top 5 resolutions. And again, you can filter specifics if you'd like. When you're looking at a specific school, like obviously if you're a school-based administrator, you will not see every school, but you can filter by that and look at specific behaviors and resolutions yet again. You can also compare, if you are a building administrator, you can compare to schools within your articulation area, and community superintendents as well can look at this. Obviously, if you're a high school, most articulation areas do not have multiple high schools, so that might not be super helpful. But you can, the second comparison of same school type, that would give it, that's a comparison by education level. So that might give you a little bit more perspective, I guess, if you're looking to compare to different schools within our district. They're not named, it is only by educational level, and that's just out of respect for each school and school leader and community. Behavior resolutions are something that are really helpful for your school's PBST teams or other shared leadership teams if you want to drill down and identify specifics and ensure that there are equitable practices. Like, are we disciplining the same students for the same type of conduct the same way, or at least similarly? And this is great data that might just indicate that might be some work to do in a certain space, whether or not it's a policy that might need some revision, or potentially there's some areas where we are having some implicit bias that may be indicated by our data. Nothing malicious, it's just I can identify some hot spots. So again, you can sort by specific behavior or resolution type. This will give the breakdown of suspension and ISS rates by race and gender and ethnicity group. And then this next tile is one of my personal favorites because it will identify the specific event type and how it was responded to over time, and then you can see your totals over here. So you could look at specific cell data. You can see in this particular, actually this is district-wide, we had 133 documented 4,000 codes involving 148 separate students. Of that, we had 15 suspensions that were 13 students. So we had a couple of repeat suspensions for that. You can scroll down and look at every single type of event district-wide, and for possession or being under the influence of marijuana. We had 341 documented incidents involving 380 individual students. We had 272 student suspensions out of the 249 incidents where there were a suspension. And then these are your totals down here. It's got every single event type. Obviously, if this is at a school level, you'll only see what was happening at your school. And then the next one is resolutions by month. So if you want to see how many suspensions you had involving how many students over the course of the year, you'll have all of that here. You can see how many detentions, how many conference with student and parent. This is just a great way to see, like, how are we responding to different types of events? Is there any flow to it? And it'll give you some clear idea of what's happening in your school buildings. This next tab is amazing for your proactive behavior safety teams because this is really looking at your classroom behavior, which is the types of lower level classroom managed behaviors that we hope to get in front of so that they don't actually become an office managed referral or other more serious event type. So you can sort again by a specific type of behavior or a specific type of response or both. You can see district-wide we had 12,061 individual students that had at least one classroom behavior event documented, and total we had 40,705 classroom behavior events that were documented. Here's our breakdown by race and gender. This will be cleaned up so that it pulls automatically the name of the person that's submitting the behavior incident for consistency. And then we can see our top 10 behavior types by location, our top 10 behavior responses by location, and then incidents by month and behavior responses by month, and the similar type of table where it's got every specific type of classroom behavior that's aligned to our matrix, every type of response that was documented, over time, and then you've got your totals. So you can see, as a school, how are we responding to academic dishonesty, and are there indications that that's an effective response? Is there something that we're doing that's not working? How can we utilize this data to better inform our practice and indicate a need for revision, if at all necessary? And then the final piece of this, also important, is the student level information. So obviously I'm looking at all school data, but you can look at, this is alphabetical, but you can sort it by grade level, you can sort it by gender, you can sort by race, you can look at classroom behavior incidents, as well as office managed behavior disciplines, and by school. Obviously, if you're looking at if you're at a school level, you're only looking at your students, but once you select a single student, you can click at that red tab and it opens up, and you can see all of the types of behavior incidents that were documented, as well as the types of responses. You can see this over time, like where the student might have struggled. It looks like November was kind of a rough month. And then classroom behavior events, this pulls straight from campus, so all of the documentation, who submitted it, and what the response was, what the behavior type was, where it happened, etc. You can also see, if you have access to this, the behavior incidents that are in the Office Managed tab. So the details of that, who reported it, what the resolution was, and what the actual event code was that led to that resolution. So this is all really great data that can help your school teams dig in and identify who's struggling, what's happening at your school, and where you might need to target your interventions and supports. So I know this was a quick overview. I will be doing some more targeted short videos that are tab specific. And obviously, if you have questions, I would be happy to help. But hopefully this gives you a general overview about this incredibly useful tool that can really support this work within your schools.